What's happening? A happy hump day to you and yours. Thanks for joining us as always. It is very much appreciated. Plenty of Patriots to get to on today's pod, but we start with the biggest sports news in Boston. Of course, I'm talking about the Red Sox making a trade with the Yankees last night. Throw your comments into the chat as you file into the room. Want your thoughts on this deal. And first and foremost, this is the first significant move by Craig Breslow. First significant move by Breslow, being the guy in Boston. Alex Verdugo to the Yankees for Richard Fitz, Greg Weissert, and Nicholas Judas. Now, Breslow first tells us all that he is not afraid to pull the trigger. And he actually shows us that with this trade. This is a guy who's calling the shots, who is not afraid to pull that trigger. We know Chaim Bloom, that was the biggest criticism of his tenure with the Red Sox, was his inability, his lack of desire to make a trade. He was always hesitant. He was always taking time. He was always overthinking things. And with this move, Breslow proves to us that he is not afraid like Chaim Bloom, that he is willing to pull the trigger. And let's not forget that Verdugo was in that Mookie Betts trade, so Bloom was kind of tied at the hip to Verdugo. And I think this shows us that Breslow is looking at these guys, and he's not attached to anybody. He's walking into this organization. He's unattached. He's ready to make moves. So the first significant move by Breslow shows us that he's not afraid and that he's not attached like Chaim Bloom. What's the reaction to this deal throughout baseball? Well, if you look at Hot Stove Intel on Twitter/X, he is an MLB executive. It's a burner account. And Hot Stove Intel posted last night, what a win by Craig Breslow. Stole Isaiah Campbell from the Mariners for a second baseman due to make $4.5 million plus in arbitration, and he was going to non-tender. Just fleeced Brian Cashman. Red Sox have been desperate to jettison Verdugo. Boston is back. Again, that's a burner account for an MLB exec on Twitter/X. The trade with the Yankees is bold. Whenever you trade within a division, it's bold. You're going to play the Yankees, 13 times this upcoming season. We know that Verdugo is all pumped and jacked. He's a guy who gets motivated, plays with a chip on his shoulder, and this is the motivation for him. He is going to go out to prove himself to the Red Sox and to the rest of baseball. And when you face him, he is going to be somebody who wants to take you out. And he could serve as a constant reminder for Breslow and the rest of this baseball organization. Could be a reminder of a mistake that they made, right? If he goes out there, he hits 25 home runs, he plays gold glove defense, then you look at this and you say, man, that was a bold move by Breslow, but we have to watch this guy 13 times a year rip us apart. So yes, this is a bold move by the president of baseball operations, chief executive baseball officer, the Grand Poobah, whatever the hell his title is. Is this going to be part of a Juan Soto trade? I know that popped up last night. Reportedly not. Reportedly, the Yankees are going to hold on to Alex Verdugo. And when we look at the talent and we look at this deal, and we'll talk about the pieces that were traded back to Boston and what Breslow gets here. But let's start with this. This was predictable. We all knew that Verdugo was going to go. We all knew that he was going to be traded this offseason. There wasn't much doubt. The Cora relationship had been fractured. Alex Cora does not get along with Alex Verdugo. That much is obvious. The manager is out on this guy. The organization is out on this guy. Maturity, discipline questions. He was benched not once but twice last season. He made that 7 weeks comment in August, which was an embarrassment. And Chris Cotillo of Mass Live wrote about Verdugo today. Ultimately, the polarizing Verdugo was just someone who needed to go. Quietly throughout 2022, tensions bubbled behind the scenes as others with the Red Sox took issue with Verdugo's unorthodox pregame routines and questionable commitment. The club's issues with Verdugo weren't frivolous or unfounded. At a certain point, it became clear that past mistakes, Verdugo was reamed out, by the way, by then Dodgers teammate Rich Hill for being late in 2017. Those past mistakes were not only not behind Verdugo, but repeating themselves 6 years later. Every time the, quote, Verdugo is maturing, unquote, narrative began gaining steam, team officials privately cautioned not to go crazy with it. Around every corner was another bubbling issue. The Red Sox could not trust this guy. They didn't believe in him. They wanted him out of the clubhouse. He was acting a fool. And this is what happens when you act a fool. We'll continue with your thoughts, my thoughts on this deal. Don't forget to throw your comments into the chat. Send them in. Also, don't forget to give us that thumbs up while you're watching, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. Give us that like, comment, and subscribe. And yes, we will get to the Patriots in just a few minutes, but I want to continue on this deal. Breslow, what he does here is he trades from a strength to address a weakness. This is kind of, executive 101 stuff from Breslow. You have outfield depth, and as we've talked about from the very, very beginning of this podcast, you need pitching. Pitching is priority number one in this offseason. So you take a strength and you try to address a weakness, and that weakness is pitching at every level, and your strength is the current outfield. Yoshida, Duran, Abreu. I would imagine Abreu is going to be out there in right field now. And I know Cora has talked about this and standing by Abreu. So what you do is you deal from that strength. You have Rafaela, you have Refsnyder, you have Dahlback that could all kind of chip in as well in the outfield to go along with Yoshida, Duran, and Abreu. You have outfielders. You have outfielders to trade from. So now you trade one of those outfielders and you address a weakness, which is pitching. Richard Fitz, by the way, Yankees number 12 prospect per MLB Pipeline, number 16 according to Baseball America. Here's what Baseball America wrote about Fitz. He has the best control of any pitcher in the Double-A Eastern League this year, according to league managers. Chris Clegg, Dynasty Dugout, host of Toolshed Podcast, Sox Prospects Evaluator. Fitz is the focal point of the Red Sox return. At Double-A Somerset, he had a 26% K rate, under 7% walk rate. Fastball sits 93, 94, reaching 97. He's got a slider in the mid-80s, plenty of whiffs on that pitch. He throws a changeup that they're still working on. That's in the high 80s. And his called strikes plus whiffs is 29%, and that means generating swings and misses. So that's the guy. That's the guy they wanted. MLB Pipeline wrote about Fitz, said he was being considered as a first-round pick in 2021. He then injured his foot. He fell to the 6th round to the Yankees. Pipeline writes, the next step toward becoming a possible mid-rotation starter will be refining his command because he's hittable when he doesn't locate his pitches well. Greg Weissert, relief pitcher, likely AAA kind of big league fringe guy, big league depth guy out of the bullpen. He threw 20 innings last year, had an ERA of just over 4. And Nicholas Judas was picked in the 8th round last year. He's a relief arm. He's 6'8", low to mid-90s on the fastball. So what you're doing if you're Breslow is you're addressing all 3 levels of the pitching staff, right? All 3 levels of the organization pitching-wise. You've got a fringe Major League Baseball relief pitcher. You've got a high-level minors guy who's performed pretty well, and you've got a low-level minors guy who could be a lottery ticket. All 3 levels of your organization, you're addressing pitching, which, again, is priority number 1. And we all said when Breslow was hired, this is his calling card. We have to believe that Breslow knows what he's doing when we talk about pitching. That's what he's known for. So if anybody is going to take these 3 guys and get the most out of them, if you believe the resume, if you believe all the think tank about what Breslow and who Breslow is, you imagine that this guy will be capable of getting more out of these 3 than the Yankees were going to be capable of getting out of them. So this is the first test for Breslow. Can he prove to be this pitching magician? Can he turn one of these guys into something that is a very good return? That's on Breslow. Jury's still out. But this is his calling card. This is why he came here. He came here first to address pitching. His first significant move addresses pitching. The biggest issue for the Red Sox moving Verdugo is trying to replace his defense. Gold glove caliber right fielder. We don't want to overlook that. And this team we know had a big weakness defensively last year. So can they replace him defensively? That's going to be a big question. Financially, this frees up about $9 million. Boston Strong last night on X/Twitter posted that the Red Sox now could spend $55 million and still be under the luxury tax. And yes, we all know John Morosi reported this yesterday. Yamamoto is on the radar. Yoshinobu Yamamoto is priority number 1 for the Red Sox, and having $55 million under the luxury tax makes it a little bit easier to go out there and do all you can to bring in Yamamoto. We know they need starting pitching. We know Yamamoto is at the top of the list. Jordan Montgomery has been discussed. They need a right-handed bat, and they need a second baseman. So we'll see what they do with this $55 million. And just to close everything up on this deal, let's just look back for a second on how terrible the Mookie Betts trade was. My freaking goodness, what a dumpster fire. Jeter Downs is DFA'd. Connor Wong has a career 670 OPS for the Sox. And now you just traded Verdugo, crossing your fingers that one of these guys is going to be decent for you in the long term. That Mookie Betts trade was awful. All right, could the Patriots bring back an old friend as a major piece of the 2024 puzzle? An interesting report that we'll get to in a minute. First, don't forget, give us that thumbs up, like on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Let's jump to a couple of comments about the Sox before we move on to the Patriots. JN Chalafor says, if Alex Cora couldn't get Verdugo to focus for more than a half a season, what does Aaron Boone have? Yeah, I don't know, JN. I mean, at every stop, this guy has been an issue. They needed him out of the clubhouse. They needed him out of the dugout. Remove the problem, and Verdugo was a problem. Benny's Ben says, please build the rotation. Yes, I agree. We all know that. They need two starters, I believe. They need a front of the rotation guy, and they need somebody who could fit as a 3 or a 4, depending if you believe on Chris Sale or not. So they absolutely need pitching. Everybody knows it, including the guy who's calling the shots in Craig Breslow. All right, let's jump to the Patriots. We all know that Mac, if you read and you watch and you listen to enough stuff, Mac feels like he's gone. Feels like Mac Jones is going to move on. He will not be a Patriot in 2024. It's not a guarantee, but that's how it feels. The Patriots, if they don't draft a quarterback, the question is, what do you do then? What are the options? And Jeff Howe of The Athletic, a friend of the podcast, had him on towards the beginning of this venture. You should check out that pod with Jeff Howe. Jeff wrote this recently in The Athletic. Kirk Cousins and Ryan Tannehill are set to be free agents. Jimmy Garoppolo could get released and could be, let's underline could be an option in New England if the Patriots keep the Bill Belichick regime intact but miss out on a top 2 pick. Okay, so if the Patriots don't end up in the top 2, and right now they're slotted with the 2nd pick overall, if they don't end up with a top 2 pick, Jeff Howe reports that the Patriots could actually bring back Jimmy Garoppolo. No. 100% no. We don't need it. Don't need it. Don't want it. Why? Jimmy Garoppolo is completely mid. He is completely mid. A complete and utter average quarterback at best. When he plays, he's not very good. And he hardly plays because he can't help himself from getting injured. Why would you want to bring in a middling quarterback? We've gone through the quarterback play that we've gone through as Patriots fans and Patriots media and Patriots pundits. We've gone through this quarterback circus. And you're telling me that there's a possibility that Jimmy G would be the guy that comes in 2024 if the Patriots don't draft a quarterback at the top of next year's draft. That's what you're telling me. That we're going to replace Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi with Jimmy freaking Garoppolo. I'm sorry, just not good enough. Injured all the time and average. We're going to replace less than average play with average play from time to time, if he's out there. That would be a nightmare to me. I don't want the Patriots anywhere near Jimmy Garoppolo unless you're talking about him being a QB2. You cannot bring him in with the thought that he's going to be your starting quarterback. That is going to backfire. And we will be sitting here a year from now, if Garoppolo's the quarterback, talking about a team that is going to be middle of the road at best. At best. We could be looking at another, 4 wins or 5 wins in 2024. I don't want anything to do with Jimmy Garoppolo. Nothing. Jimmy Garoppolo is not the answer. Not even in the short term. I don't even care who you go out and you get in free agency or who you draft. Garoppolo still isn't good enough. Garoppolo was average in San Francisco. Garoppolo was average with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey. Garoppolo was an average quarterback with all of those skill position guys out there for the 49ers. Trent Williams, best left tackle in the game. Pretty good offensive line. Let's not forget that Kyle Shanahan looked at Garoppolo years ago when they made it to the Super Bowl, and he decided to have Garoppolo throw the football 8 times in a playoff game. 8 times in a playoff game. Jimmy Garoppolo's not the guy. Give me a freaking break. If we're talking about that, what are we doing? Again, if you bring in a Jimmy Garoppolo or any of these other quarterbacks that are going to be available, at best, it's QB2 for many of these guys. And if we're talking about a quarterback competition with Jimmy Garoppolo, that tells us the level of quarterback play that we should expect in 2024. And I'm sorry, I don't want to sit through more average quarterback play, if not worse than that. I've seen enough of it since post-Brady. We went through it with Cam, who wasn't good. Mac Jones, rookie season, good. Last 2 years, not good. Bailey Zappi last weekend, not good. Haven't we seen enough bad quarterback play for the last 3-4 years? I mean, come on now. You can bring in T. Higgins if you want. You can draft Marvin Harrison. Jimmy Garoppolo had top talent at the Niners and still wasn't very good. And by the way, when you look at free agency, for the people who don't want to draft a quarterback, if you're a Patriots fan and you don't want to draft a quarterback, and I think we'll talk more about this at some point later this week, the Red Sox trade kind of pushed this aside on what I think the Patriots should do at the top of the draft if they have a top 2 pick. But if you are a Patriots fan, if you're a Patriots pundit and you're sitting there saying to yourself, you don't need to draft a quarterback, just go out there and find one of those guys. Go find a game manager. I don't think game managers win you a ton of games aside from a team that's built perfectly like the 49ers. And the Patriots are not going to be able to build a 49ers-like roster in 1 year. You want to go out and get a Band-Aid? I mean, the prize of the free agency class is going to be Kirk Cousins. And as good as Kirk Cousins has played, as good as he has looked in stretches, let me ask you this. And you can put a comment in if you'd like. And don't forget to give us that thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube, watching on Twitter, watching on Facebook. Comment, like, subscribe. Let me ask you this question. Are you comfortable? Are you comfortable with paying Kirk Cousins $40 million a year? Because that's what it's going to take. I think that would submarine a lot of the rebuild that we talk about happening here in New England. Paying a quarterback who is average to above average, $40 million a year is how you get stuck in being okay but not good enough. Playing elite defense is very difficult nowadays in 2023 in the NFL. You're not going to see another 2,000 Ravens. Those teams are few and far between if you find them at all nowadays. You need good quarterback play. Are you going to pay Kirk Cousins $40 million a year at 35 years old coming off of a torn Achilles? Does that sound like a good business plan? Does that sound like a good idea? Oh, he tore his Achilles. He's 35 years old. Let's pay him $40 million a year. Sounds like a great idea to me. You want to hear about the other free agents? The other free agents at quarterback this year, Ryan Tannehill. Does he get you all excited in the loins? You doing jumping jacks when I bring up Ryan Tannehill? How about Jacoby Brissett? We went through that already. You want Brissett back? How about Marcus Mariota? Want to bring him back? David Carr apparently thinks Mariota should be starting for the Eagles. What a terrible take that was. Tannehill, Brissett, Mariota. How about Sam Darnold? Does he tickle your fancy? Is that somebody you want to look at? Jameis Winston, the human turnover machine? Baker Mayfield, okay, maybe. Pretty average. Gardner Minshew, pretty average. That's the free agency field, folks, at quarterback. You're not going to go out there and find some great QB in free agency. You're going to find somebody like a Tannehill, like a Garoppolo, and you're going to bring them in here and they're going to play average at best football. And what is that going to do? I don't think it's going to do enough. And then in 2 years, you're going to have to start to think about replacing that guy. You want to trade for Justin Fields? He's got his 5th-year option decision coming up in May. You want to trade for Justin Fields? And if he plays well enough, then you're looking at the same situation you'd have with Mac. If you don't pick up his option, you're looking at paying him a brand new deal at like $35 million a year for somebody who had one good year, or maybe you franchise him and you kick the can down the road. Look at these other options at quarterback and free agency and these other guys that you might get via trade and ask yourself, are those guys good enough? Jimmy Garoppolo. Talk about Jimmy Garoppolo. Guy can't stay on the field. All right, one last note as we go here on the Nick Cattle Show on this hump day. Thanks for joining me as always on this Wednesday. I appreciate every single one of you. I appreciate all of your support. I'm going to get to one last note that irritates me to the point of almost no return with this Patriots team. I remind you to hit that like button. Josh Uche. Now, we talked about the trading deadline and how Bill Belichick did nothing at the deadline. And it left me scratching my head. I could not understand for the life of me why Belichick didn't pull the trigger on making any trades at the trading deadline for a team that at that point was dead ass, and even now to this point is even more dead ass. And you look at Josh Uche. The latest on Josh Uche should frustrate every single Patriots fan that is within earshot of me right now. If you're a Patriots fan and you're watching this podcast right now, if you're a Patriots fan and you're listening to this podcast, the Josh Uche story should irritate, annoy, and frustrate you to no ends. Should frustrate every single one of you. Mike Giardi recently wrote that he spoke with an AFC executive. And that AFC executive said that Uche is going to be, quote unquote, a man in demand. Uche is going to have a market. He's going to have a good market. He might even have a very good market. And Giardi wrote that Uche will, quote unquote, happily enter free agency. So an AFC executive says Uche has a market. And I can tell you right now, Uche's agent knows if Uche has a market. So Uche is going to have a good market. And he will happily walk into free agency. And you decided not to trade that guy at the trading deadline. That's what you decided to do. To not trade that guy. You know what Spotrac says is Uche's estimated market value? $58 million. Do you think Bill Belichick or do you think anybody is going to pay Josh Uche here in New England $58 million? Now, maybe we could look at Gerard Mayo. If he is the next head coach of this organization, maybe Mayo would hold on to Uche. But $58 million, are you paying Uche $58 million when you need all of this help on the offensive side of the football? Against the Chargers, Uche played 19 snaps. This year, Uche has played about 27% of the snaps. We're talking about a guy who has played about a quarter of the snaps this season. And we know that there was interest. The Jaguars wanted to trade for Uche. Seattle reportedly was interested in Uche. Bill Belichick could have got a 5th-round pick in return for Uche, but he decided not to pull that trigger. And for people saying, oh, a 5th-round pick. Look, a 5th-round pick's a lottery ticket. I'll take all the lottery tickets that I can get if I'm the Patriots right now with this roster. Pop Douglas was a 6th-round pick. He was a lottery ticket. He has promise. And by the way, if you need to move up in the draft, what can you do? You can trade some of those picks. You can trade a 4th or a 5th or a 6th-round pick. You put a little extra sugar on the deal, and you move up a couple of spots. So a 5th-round pick does have value. You know what a 5th-round pick has? A 5th-round pick, I can look this up. Hold on, let me check my notes here. Searching through my book. Oh, a 5th-round pick has more value than 0 pick. Yeah. A 5th-round pick has more value than no pick at all. And if you're thinking about the compensatory pick, you're not going to get it because the Patriots have $75 million at least in cap space. So as soon as they start signing guys, those compensatory picks, they're out the window. And this is why I was frustrated at the trading deadline. You have a guy who's playing a quarter of the snaps. Teams want him. They're willing to trade you a draft pick for him, but you decide to keep him, and now we sit here on December 6th, 2023 with your New England Patriots 2-10, dead in the water, having the second pick overall in the draft. And they still have Uche playing about a quarter of the snaps. Congratulations. That is asset mismanagement. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous he wasn't traded. Something is better than nothing. The 5th round pick gives you that ammo. It's an extra dart. At worst, it's an extra dart to throw on draft night. That's what it is. And we are in a situation right now here in New England where the Patriots have to manage their assets correctly. It's as simple as that. I don't think it's crazy to believe that all 3 big ticket items could be gone when this season is over. I don't think it's crazy to believe or hypothesize that Uche, Kyle Duggar, and Michael Wenu could all be out the door. If you lose all 3 of those guys and they walk out the door, you're not getting any compensatory picks for those 3 individuals. And you got nothing for them at the trading deadline. That is brutal. Now, maybe nobody wanted Onwenu. I don't know. Find it hard to believe. Maybe nobody wanted Duggar. Maybe. But we know teams wanted Uche. Multiple. And Bill Belichick decided to hold on to all 3. Any talent that you lose this offseason that you could have traded at the trading deadline and did not trade, that is a huge swing and a miss. Craig Breslow ain't afraid of trading. Apparently Bill Belichick was at the trade deadline. Boston Swag says, good work, Nick. I'm a little late today, but I made it. I appreciate you, Boston Swag, as always. So when you look at these decisions by Belichick, it's mismanagement over and over and over again. We've gone through the track record of drafts, the last 7-8 drafts where they've just been pitiful. And we're not talking about the 2023 draft because it's too early to evaluate that draft class, but we've talked about it. The misses on draft weekend, the misses in free agency, not trading guys when you should be trading them when your season is done. And Belichick, we all sat there and said, this season is over, Bill. It's over. There's like a 2% chance that you have any life the rest of this season. We all saw it. But Belichick, we've talked about the stubbornness, the principles, right? I guess he had it in his mind. If we can't get a 4th round pick for Josh Uche, then we're not trading him, which makes no sense if you're going to get nothing for him and he walks in free agency. But here we are. That's what we're talking about. Hopefully I get this right. McTaggart, of course, Bill needed Uche. Like he still played Mac a couple weeks after he was cooked. Bill needs his 347. Of course, talking about the Don Shula record. Wanting to keep the guys, the head coach versus the GM. When they are the same guy, you have an issue. Head coach Belichick wanted to keep all of those guys unless somebody overpaid for them, quote unquote, because he was focused on the W's. GM Belichick should have been thinking about the long-term success of this program. Should have been thinking about asset management. Should have been thinking about accumulating draft picks as much as he could to make this offseason as productive as it could be. But head coach Belichick would not allow GM Belichick to pull the trigger. And then head coach Belichick goes up there and is unwilling to speak as GM Belichick and discuss the trade deadline with zero accountability, zero responsibility, and zero transparency. It's a broken record. It's crazy they did not trade Josh Uche. It is crazy mismanaging that asset. So many mistakes. So many mistakes. All right, I appreciate you joining me here on this hump day. Continue to give us those thumbs up, the comments. Subscribers, continue to subscribe as well if you haven't. I appreciate every single one of you. Tomorrow, we'll be back at 11 a.m. Eastern sharp. We'll talk more Patriots and any other breaking news that happens. Again, thank you for joining us on this hump day. Hump day.